Please give a warm welcome from the USA, Danny Kennedy.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here back in Eindhoven. I came here in 2008, visited the Clean Tech campus, and I'm happy to be in the sort of high-tech center of Netherlands and with you all. And we'll be talking a little bit about Sungevity and my story and how we can get to yes and promote a lot more solar. As Edwin mentioned, I kind of come out of this background of doing silly things like this and trying to stop Prime Ministers of Australia getting in bed with coal companies. But I found through a campaign that I ran for Greenpeace in California about 12 years ago in 2001, the power of a solution was sort of overwhelming. We ran a plebiscite, a citizen-initiated referenda, which is possible in some US states, to get $100 million worth of bonds for solar and wind financing in the city of San Francisco. And these students and myself, we organized people to turn out the vote, and we got 73% of the vote that November, just after 9/11, when the world was in pretty dark days. And it was an amazing statement for sort of 3/4 of any US population to vote for anything. You know, they're so polarized over there. And it was this aha moment for me that we had something with solar power that could really challenge the status quo and make people inspired and want to do something great for the world and vote for a solution. So basically my story is kind of the story, I think, of our industry and movement, which is moving from saying no to the climate polluting, problem causing, dirty energy of the past and saying yes to this clean energy solution, which doesn't just change the way we supply power in the literal sense, but it will change the way that we have power relations in the figurative sense. And I'm sure we'll hear much more about that from the next speaker, Jeremy, and the third industrial revolution. But, you know, this was sort of my come to Jesus moment. Like, my life had to become about getting more of this solution supported by more people. And so we set up Sungevity in a lot of ways to do that. It's a company that goes to residential customers, makes it easy and affordable to get a solar solution for their home. And that touches them with those benefits, the feeling of doing something good, being part of a bigger purpose, saving money, giving their kids a better legacy. All those positives that we generate by putting solar on their home means that when it comes to the next ballot or the next policy question or the next political ask, they'll be there standing with us for a clean energy future. So we have a mission statement that is to build the world's most energized network of people who power their lives with sunshine. And we think we're sort of building that to this day as a campaigning corporation. But I just want to remind you what we all do. I mean, you all do this, so it's sort of a bit redundant, and forgive me if this is too simple, and I'll get to questions and talk about the US market and current conditions. But, you know, we're in a really good place. We have this fantastic machine called the photovoltaic panel that sits on the point of use of electricity and converts photons directly to electrons. And it's growing gangbusters. We'll go through some of the figures about how fast it's growing. But just in the United States, Edwin asked me to address some of the sort of market realities there. It's the fastest growing job creation engine in the United States through the Great Recession. Critical metric. We employ more people now in America than the coal mining industry. In California, we employ more people in the solar industry than there are actors. In Texas, where I hung that banner all those years ago, there are more solar industry workers than there are ranchers in the big state of Texas. So the solar industry is going gangbusters and creating a lot of value for a lot of people. Some other figures for you that might be of note. One is, there's a lot of hype right now in the States about natural gas. You would have heard all the media about shale gas and fracking and all this nonsense about, oh, we've created an infinite supply of natural gas, and it's coming to Europe too, I know. So last year, at the height of this natural gas boom, more wind and solar was added to the United States electricity grid than gas-fired generation. So despite all the hype, the fact is that we're actually doing better. This year, 2013, I like to say that I think maybe the Mayans were right. You know how at the end of 2012 they said it was the end of the world? Well, I think it was the end of the world as we know it, because January 2013 was the first month in history when all the new electricity additions into the United States grid were renewable power. They were wind, solar, and biomass. There were no fossil fuel generating plants linked into the US electricity grid in January. And this first quarter, January through March, 82% of all new additions were solar. Like, we're winning the race to rewire the country and the world with this technology for a bunch of reasons. We're doing really well. The main reason is that we've got a better solution, because this is what we're displacing. This other, much dumber way of doing it. Same deal, solar energy falls free from the sky. In this case, it got taken up by plants 200 million years ago. They died and became fossils. And then we come up and dig them up, burn them to boil water, which is a really bad idea in a water-scarce world. Like, you know, I don't know whether you know this, but 30% of French nuclear reactors were shut down last year because the river water couldn't keep them cool. In the United States, 49% of water used for human use goes to steam turbines. 42% goes to agriculture, the rest goes to all other uses. As we get worried about water limitations, we're going to stop boiling it off for steam in turbines. And then, of course, we shunt it to our houses through this very inefficient transmission grid that we have. So we've got a better solution with this thing, and you and I know that from lived experience and because of our work. But just sometimes it's best to remember it in simple terms. Same deal, solar energy, we just take it direct at the point of use through a machine that is incredibly efficient. Don't let them tell you that it's not efficient. 15% of those photons falling out of the sky become electrons underneath that machine. No moving parts, no boiling of water, no digging up, nothing required. Whereas if you take the solar energy in this, it's less than 0.15% of the energy falling out of the sky. So the other thing to note about why we're winning, and you know, one of the things I want to leave with you is the fact that we are, is just the scale of growth. The year I was born, there was 1 megawatts of solar cells produced on this planet. So they were mostly going back then to your Casio calculators and to satellites to power the then growing information technology. They took until 2004 to get to a gigawatt. So I was married and had children by then. And then just to last year, we got up to 35 gigawatts, as you know, in terms of solar installed that year. We're on track, we think, for just over a decade out to do 10x that. Another way of talking about this is cumulative installed. So the technology was invented in 1954, just about 60 years ago. We just got over the 100 gigawatt mark in terms of cumulative installed solar panels on Earth. So it took 60 years to do 100 gigawatts. The next 100 gigawatts will take 6 years. And then the next 100 gigawatts after that is projected to take less than 1 year. So we're on that ramp. We're doing that S-curve. And what that means is that we're becoming incredibly cheap. This is real numbers from the United States electricity experience over the last century, where fossil fuels have gone up for good reason. They're governed by an economic rule called scarcity. You dig them up, they become less plentiful, they go up in price. There's also things like water is scarce, and the room we have to pollute is scarce. So it's limited, you pay more for it, it goes up in price. These are real kilowatt hour figures for range of prices that average Americans pay for the electricity they use. And you know the story. In Hawaii, it's even more expensive than that. But that's kind of the story to date of dirty energy. And this is the story of solar electricity. It's pretty simple. It's driven by a different economic rule, which is a technology curve. And it's the volume production learning curve. Every doubling of volume, we've dropped the price by 18% for the electricity that we actually get out the back of the machine. So while it was still only being used for space and calculators, it was pretty expensive. And then we started mass producing it in the last decade, and it's dropped precipitously, 80% over the last 5 years. You've seen all this in your own businesses. And unless someone can convince me that that curve is going to bend back upwards, or the fossil fuel curve is going to get cheap all of a sudden, then we know what happens here. We know which technology wins, and ultimately, and not too far away, probably by about 2030, becomes the plurality of power, or the biggest single source of electricity in the system, because the economics dictate that it has to. And you know, the tariffs that are in the mix in the news right now here in Europe and have been in the States for the last year, the risk is that they bend the solar curve back up somehow, but they really don't, because they can't overcome the dramatic nature of that learning curve. The fact is that the US tariff, when 30% tariffs were imposed on imports of panels to the United States last year, it didn't change the price or the cost structure of our business at all. And hopefully that will be the same for you, I can't say, but the fact that the European Union has done this at this stage seems crazy to me when we know the world needs more of this stuff now. And instead of punishing China for putting subsidies and promoting the clean energy industry, we should be working out how to collaborate with them and get more of this stuff going, in my opinion. So we've got a big sea change going on. Some of the bad guys don't see it. Some of them are laughing about it. Some of them fight it. It's a bit like cell phones and telephony, or the telephone and the postal service in days gone by. You know, we've still got people out there saying that solar doesn't even work, as you know, and they're trying to make sure that it doesn't by using all their political connivances and tricks. But the fact is, because of all those things that I mentioned, we are winning. And because people love it, we're winning. You know, that heartfelt resonance that I mentioned at the start about the campaign that we ran for solar in California back in 2001, that really is the most important thing. People, all cultures throughout all history, love solar power. It's like related to health and hygiene and goodness and life itself, and that's why ultimately we can win. But the other reason is you make really good money out of it. So this is my favorite slide from this year to date. NRG is one of America's largest utilities. They do the whole gamut. They have gas, nukes, coal. They generate electricity any way they can. And they went to great pains recently reporting to analysts on the Wall Street that they were doing a lot of solar projects, because if you look at those EBITDA numbers down the bottom here, they've got half as many megawatts going in of solar, and yet they're going to earn per unit twice as much profit out of those solar projects. And that's just the reality in the US market. You make better money from a technology that doesn't have a fuel input cost than you do from one that does have, and also has all the regulatory burdens and environmental problems and other cost structures. So the world is starting to wake up to that, and some big businesses are fighting us still, but most of them are starting to get with the program. And you know, it's not just NRG, it's GE, it's Blackstone, which has bought one of our competitors, it's Warren Buffett, who's the biggest holder of solar projects in the United States now. He has about $7 billion invested, $3 billion this year, $3 billion last year, a couple billion in between. And then it's the public markets too. They're lapping this stuff up. The peer to Sungevity, Solar City, that went public late last year, I think went out at about $8. It's at $54 last time I looked. One of its competitors, Real Good Solar, has gone from less than $1 to $7 this year. The sort of smart money is starting to see the writing on the wall, notwithstanding what's going on internationally with Saudi Arabia putting $100 billion down for solar projects and all the stuff that I'm sure Solar Plaza has held many great conferences on. So it's sort of an exciting time as the big end of town gets with the program and starts to realize that we're on a winner here. Some of the thoughts that I wanted to leave for you about what we're doing in the States that's different maybe, and what we can collaborate on and try to do better, are things that make solar easier and more affordable and more attractive to customers. So, you know, for example, Sungevity was the pioneer of what we call remote solar design. So we take satellite and aerial photographs to do the engineering of systems without going to the site. The solar leasing business, which you probably talked about here, and I'm happy to answer as many questions as you like about, is the real game changer in US adoption, the thing that has really fueled growth. It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar asset class. This is in California alone, in a very short period of time. The solar leasing wasn't in the market 5 years ago, and now 70% of customers in the United States that are going solar go with a solar lease. So the consumer has spoken with their feet and said that we prefer to go no money down, pay as you go, than cash up front. And that's been a real game changer. And then more broadly, I think there's just a need for business model innovation and different ingenious ways of doing things that we already do, but doing them better with some other technologies and inputs from maybe other sectors or other experiences, which is why a place like Eindhoven might be a really good cultural milieu to create ways to further spread solar to the masses. I'm on the board of a company called Mosaic, which does crowdfunding of solar projects. So basically we source debt for project developers from retail investors across America who can put as little as $25 in to a solar project and earn 4.5% returns on that money. And they have an account on the web where they go in, they select projects, they invest whatever amount of money they want, and they get their dividends through time as the revenue from the electricity of the off-taker comes back to the platform. And you know, we're going to move hundreds of millions of dollars pretty soon, I would say, with that platform. And finance is really the key that unlocks the potential, as it has with the PPA space and commercial solar, the solar lease and residential solar. I think things like this are really going to help drive solar adoption. And then the final thought is just sort of about marketing and the ways in which we've really worked as a company, Sungevity, and are working with Zonline, our partner here in the Netherlands, to make it as easy and simple as possible, and to use third-party validators to give trust and confidence to consumers. And those third-party validators, we believe, can be customers themselves. You know, clearly solar is a social phenomena. It's adopted because your neighbor tells you over the backyard fence that it's really cool and it works and it saves you money. Or some other force in your life, whether it's a retailer that you respect, like Lowe's, which is our biggest investor at Sungevity and puts us in front of their customers in their stores, or a non-profit that you are a member of. We've at Sungevity been able to go out to market with non-profits all across America and have raised over $1 million for them by paying them our marketing allocation for them to go get us customers. And for many of them, it's a real win-win because they've been talking about climate change forever, and they're all, you know, again, talking about the no, we've got to stop the bad stuff, and they don't have a lot of ways to say yes and how and what we stand for. And so when they go out and say, get a solar lease with Sungevity, that solution really drives their members to get involved, and there's evidence that they also pick up their political work and so on when they get a solar home through sungevity.org. And then, of course, we're giving them a bonus with the money that they fundraise through the program. And I know that Zonline is doing that here with some nonprofits as well. It's just an example of thinking about the customer and putting them first and trying to use things in their experience to validate the fact that they should go solar and that it'll work for them well. Using third-party validators and customer referrals is key to the business. And that would be my very last thought, is just that our secret to success, I think, is a customer focus. You know, I think solar companies historically have been very gadget-oriented and technology-driven. And the fact is, we're actually a service business. We're not really a hardware business. We're selling the service of electricity, the stuff that keeps your beer cold and your showers warm. And we've got to think like that. Like, what is it that the customer wants to feel good, to feel secure, and to feel maybe fun or sexy or, I don't know, you know, special in going solar with our companies. And that's what a lot of the customer service we do is all about, making them feel positive. We measure ourselves very religiously with our Net Promoter Score and how strong our referral engine is and the propensity of customers to refer us. And for me, you know, that's what we think will be the way that we build our business across the United States and around the world as we go forward. So with that, I think I'll stop talking and take questions, if that's good. Thank you.